that snare sound is like quite undeniably amazing. And then I think maybe this is the reverb. Yeah. So there's a kind of gated reverb coming back to it.
This episode is being supported by Tape It, the iPhone recording app made for musicians by musicians.
Really nice little flutes there. I literally need to have flutes in the music, otherwise it's basically not music as far as I'm concerned.
It's quite a signature of yours, a flute,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, it's just got to be in there.
But they're all created in the box?
All in the box,
Yeah.
all in the box. Don't be silly, it's all in the box.
It's a very in the box record.
I love the box, what can I say? This is on a possibly my favourite synth called Plasmonic, and that's a fantastic synth. And that's the sound on its own. It produces a kind of sound that immediately evokes a world that I sort of want to be a part of. And then I bounced it into audio, so it's just like so it's just so there's no reverb tail and it's like panned to the left. And then it just forms part of a texture, which it turns into this. And because the texture of this track really demands that nothing has any kind of reverb tail at all, that these very extreme jumps. I've got certain drums that I do enjoy. A lot of these are just in my personal kit that I've made, so I think a lot of them I did make, but there are certain drums that I really like. I think RX5, a drum machine called RX5, I think is one that I really think sounds fantastic. It really has that the sound of like a kind of like a perfectly badly sampled version of whatever drum it is. I think a big thing in production is making stuff sound like what it is. And that sounds like a stupid thing to say, but it's actually a very real thing. Like, it's very easy, like if you put an EQ on something, that like that a vocal will end up sounding like just sort of a sound that you can take the character out of something. Yeah. And having and the RX5 almost is like almost like a cartoony version of what each of the drums, and I do enjoy that sometimes, but didn't use it on this. I used the drums that I made myself.
Time for a quick Tape It feature highlight. Among many of the brilliant features within Tape It, you can add a widget that lets you record straight from your lock screen. So when you have a song idea, just press record and focus on your music. To find out more, follow the link in the description or use the promo code TAPENOTES for 20% off Tape It Pro.
The drums are enhanced by these kind of like tricks that you can use to sort of enhance the stereo image. There's a tape delay trick here. Let's see if we can pull this down here, where basically the delay time is 0 milliseconds, and it's only got the sort of wet of the dry and wet up, and therefore all you're hearing there is just this really quick delay. And if I were to up the feedback, it would make it start feeding back with itself if it gets up past a certain threshold. There you go, but it's just enough below, you get that sound feeding back against itself. And because it's in a stereo image, it has this kind of like hi-fi effect to it, and you can actually control sort of what frequencies it's sort of feeding back at, if you want it low or just high. But when it gets high, it starts like feeding back in that quite harsh higher frequencies. I was just interested in it in that like that world.
Very mechanical.
Yes, that's sort of one of the things that makes that sound, and that sort of layered up then just gives it this kind of wider and kind of strange like artificial industrial feel there. And there was the sort of layered sound there. Just doubling that, just that happens once in the track. Which is the Triton, which is a synthesizer that I very much love, and it's these drums here. Yeah, love that. I think that snare sound is like quite undeniably amazing. And I like that's the snare on its own, and then I think maybe this is the reverb. Yeah. So there's a kind of gated reverb coming back to it. And I think I wanted to have that quite sort of intrusive snare going over the the track, because for some reason I quite like that sort of juxtaposition of having this like quite sort of stomping, like driving rhythm over this quite tender track. I've also got this very quiet gated reverb coming, this sort of room reverb to give it a bit of space there, which is EQ'd, taking off the low end. Then we've got it going entirely through this L Harle. That's it without, that's it with, to give it the room. And then I've got it slammed through a limiter. There we go. Sorry about that sudden raise in volume, but yes, that's So it's like, I wouldn't call that fine tuning in terms of like what some producers do, but I do when I bring something up in the Triton or whatever. I do tend to just make sure that I'm okay with the way it's being filtered, the way the sort of oscillators are working, and I'm okay with the effects that are being put on it here, like the room reverb and the reverb hall that's on it. So I always like to strip all the internal effects off a drum first and then experiment with them inside the synth before I add any ones sort of extraneously. And there's also lots of extra sort of little percussion-y details. I actually made those using what's it called, a Korg MS-10. I do actually have a single analog synthesizer in my room, and this is a Korg MS-10, and it's really good for these like white noisy little sounds. I use it for these whoosh sort of thingies. Where is it? It produces like a certain kind of white noise that I haven't really heard a plugin make, and that is the thing that I am interested in. So there.